So
Okay,
this is the Board of Selectmen's meeting from Thursday, September 10th. Jenny Jacobson is going to remind participants of some of the ground rules that we have for conducting a meeting on Zoom.
first of all, there are many people in here that aren't muted. It's very helpful that during the meeting you remain on mute unless you've been called and addressed by the board, at which time I can unmute you and the board will take your question. Second, there's a few people in here that don't have their last names identified, so I will ask at this time that you rename yourself so that your first and last name is there for the record. And third, in order to address the board at the appropriate time, you'll want to use the raise hand feature. And that's not raising your physical hand, but it's going down into the participants menu. And you'll see a raised hand function on the bottom right of your screen. When your hand goes up, I'll see you. When the chairman asks me who's next, I will unmute you and lower your hand, and everybody else will remain in the list. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. We'd like to start tonight's meeting considering a request for yard signs for the Bolton and Harvard Open Studios event to be held on Saturday, September 26th, with the rain date of the 27th. And I believe we have Ann Gillespie will be addressing this.
Yes. Can you hear me?
There you go. Hello.
Okay. Hello. Good.
Hello, Ann.
Hi. Should I go ahead?
Go right
Okay.
ahead.
So this is our third year hosting this event, and you would think by now it would be all pretty straightforward, but we weren't anticipating this situation last year. So we decided to simplify, and we're having just one day, the 26th, with a rain date of the 27th. And so we're looking for permission to put out our yard signs starting this weekend, which is 2 weeks before the event.
I'm fine. Any of the other selectmen have anything to say?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, it's
I'm
been a very
fine.
good, interesting event for the past couple of years.
Great.
Okay, could I have a motion then to allow the use of yard signs?
Make a motion that we approve the Bolton and Harvard Open Studio signs to be put up for their request.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Wysocki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
As we learned during that brief opening event, if your screen is not on mute and there is some sound coming from your machine, the video will switch to you automatically. It follows the sound. So please, if you're not going to be speaking in the immediate future, please mute your device, your computer or your iPad or your phone or whatever you're using. Okay. Next, I'd like to bring on Chief Warren Chief Nelson rather, to introduce a new officer for the police department.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday, and thank you for having us on the agenda tonight. I would like to recommend for appointment for full-time police officer, Nick Gerard. He is here tonight. He is in the group for any of your questions. But Nick is a recent graduate of the Fitchburg State University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And he also is going to be a recent graduate of their police academy as of tomorrow. So tomorrow is his graduation. So he's got one more day and then he's ours. So he's very talented. He comes highly recommended from all his past employers, from the school. All his references gave him high marks. He's also a call firefighter with the town of Townsend. And what's good about that is he's already involved with our regional dispatch. So he knows how to operate the radios. He knows how our dispatch works. So I think it's going to be a very easy mix to bring him right in.
Excellent. If Nick is with us, would he just like to introduce himself and give a little bit more about his background?
Sure. So as the chief said, I graduate from the Fitchburg State Full-Time Police Academy tomorrow. I'm very excited for that. A little bit about my background. I grew up in Townsend. I grew up in a law enforcement family with my uncle in the public service field as well. From a very young age, I wanted to be a police officer as well as a firefighter. As soon as I could, I attended the Colville, Massachusetts Fire Academy, and that was in just March of 2019. I graduated that a little bit over a year ago. So I've been a call firefighter for a little over a year. I love everything about that. From there, I shift my focus to the police academy. I've been in that since June 1st. And like I said, I'm graduating up tomorrow and I'm excited.
Very good. Sounds very promising. Anything from the other selectmen?
No, I think this is Stan. I think it's great. We certainly appreciate your interest in coming to the town of Bolton, and we look forward to getting you right into the mix. So welcome to the town of Bolton, and we look forward to having you with us.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with Stan. Welcome to Bolton. Look forward to seeing you around town.
Okay, could I have a motion to appoint Nicholas Gerard to the Bolton Police Department?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call, Wysocki,
Aye.
Heap,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you very
much.
much, everybody.
Welcome
Thanks,
aboard.
Chief.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, next, we are going to have a discussion of the host community agreement for Lovecraft of Massachusetts to use the facility at 58 Main Street. I know that we have a lot of people who want to speak on this particular issue. So at the outset, I'd like to lay out that the intent here is we will start with the town's attorney, Brian Falk, who will go over the process and sort of the guidelines and the laws that govern or will guide us through this process. Then we'll have a few words from Nick Catt, one of the principals of Lovecraft. Ask the selectmen if they have any questions or comments, and then we will open it to public questions and comments. So if Brian's available, could you join us, please?
I'm here, Mr. Chairman. Brian Falk from Eric O'Connell, Town Council to the town.
How are
Good
you?
evening, Brian.
Good evening, everyone. So just a brief overview. Under the cannabis statutes, the town has an important role in the licensing and permitting of a cannabis operation. It's usually the first stop for a cannabis applicant rather than going to the Cannabis Control Commission and seeking a state license. The statute requires that the applicant first get a host community agreement from the town. And the Board of Selectmen has authority to issue and negotiate a host community agreement if it chooses to do so. The statute's pretty broad about what may or may not be in a host community agreement. It's supposed to set the terms and conditions for the operation to be in town. You may have heard that there is an opportunity for the town if they negotiate it with the applicant for a community impact fee with a cap of 3% of the gross revenues of the facility in the town. That impact fee often gets a lot of the attention in the press and among town officials in terms of what that number will be, and among applicants interested in expressing concerns about what that figure will be. But that's one part of the host community agreement. There can be any number of other items in that agreement to explain the terms and conditions for the applicant to operate in town. So that's the decision of the Board of Selectmen. They have authority to either enter a host community agreement or not. In the past, when the town has entertained these, The board has delegated to the town administrator and town council to negotiate an agreement and then bring it back for review and either approval or disapproval or further renegotiation by the Board of Selectmen. Assuming there's a host community agreement, the applicant then may apply to the Cannabis Control Commission for a state license. But we have a zoning bylaw that also requires a special permit issued by the planning board for any cannabis use in addition to site plan approval. And so, we have two main jurisdictions in town that would review this kind of an application: the Board of Selectmen with the host community agreement, and then the planning board with a special permit. There's no clear dividing line in terms of who may address what. The special permit generally deals with land use, the use of the property for this purpose. And the host community agreement might deal more with the financials of having a cannabis operation in town. But they're independent of each other. The Board of Selectmen may or may not issue a host community agreement. The planning board may or may not issue a special permit, depending upon how the hearing goes and the ability of the board to make the findings that are required by the zoning bylaw. The planning board special permit process, it's a public hearing. Abutters get notice of that hearing, certified mail to their homes, and it's also advertised in the newspaper. And then the planning board holds its hearing, which may stretch out over a number of evenings, depending upon the issues that the board and the applicant wish to discuss. The final step in the process is at the state level, which is issuing a final license to the cannabis operation to commence operations in town. At all times, if a cannabis operation is allowed to operate, has to comply with the host community agreement, has to comply with the special permit, and any conditions that the Board of Selectmen or the planning board might require of the applicant.
Okay. Are there any questions from the selectmen about that? What we've heard so far?
No, Mr. Chairman, perhaps I just want to add that when the Commonwealth put on the ballot to either allow or not allow this type of operation, the vote was to allow, and that was some number of years ago. It should be noted that we had an article at the 2018 annual town meeting. It was Article 13. The article was not necessarily to either allow or not allow, but it was our opportunity to be able to tighten up and have some additional control over these type of establishments in the town of Bolton. So at the moment, based upon what the state vote, the Commonwealth vote was, we need to at least enter into some discussion with the applicant. We do not have the ability at the front end of this discussion to basically say yes or no. So we have to go through the process that Mr. Falk had outlined. So I just wanted to give that a little bit of clarification.
Okay, thank you. Jonathan, anything?
No comments at this point.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'd like to invite Nick Catt, one of the principals of Lovecraft of Massachusetts, to address the board and the other participants.
Can I interrupt, Mr. Chairman, first?
Yes.
I just noticed you do have a hand from someone in the audience. Are you holding off on those questions until after Mr. Catt's presentation?
Yes.
Okay, shall I begin?
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, can everyone hear me? This is my first Zoom meeting, so I just have to ask that question.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
great.
can hear you.
So my name is Nicholas Catt, and I'm here this evening representing Lovecraft of Massachusetts Incorporated, which is seeking to be a cannabis operator in your town. As per the rules thus far in the state of Massachusetts, I started this process in the town of Bolton about 2.5 years ago. I was working for a law firm that represented mostly multi-state operators and larger corporate interests that want to get into the cannabis industry. And at that time, I was working my Massachusetts broker's license under the guise of just kind of doing siting work and such. And I'd actually been assigned to come to Bolton to do that research for a law firm called Vincenti Sederberg. And I guess in the end, the goal was to kind of help them find communities that had just gotten licensing through, and then kind of match them with their larger clients, which they usually have. Most people can't afford to hire Vincenti Sederberg unless they're pretty well off. They mostly represent multi-state operators and other large interests in the cannabis industry. So that's kind of how I came upon the situation in Bolton. Is the one I is that I actually researched it for somebody else, and having gone through that process and seen what happened with the research, and then to have another multi-state operator come in, which was Temescal Wellness not that long ago with you guys. It's ironic that I'm back because I'm the first person that came into the town hall probably and introduced myself to Erica Uriarty and explained to her that I was doing research in this matter, and it was just pure research at the time. So flash forward a few years later, and I've been doing some work in the cannabis industry now and garnering licenses in several towns. We've done this before. All grassroots situation. There's no multi-state operators behind us. There's no large interests that we're working with. Ross Bradshaw, who is on a Zoom call tonight, he is probably the epitome of grassroots cannabis in the state of Massachusetts. Currently still holds about 95% of his company. And he's figured everything out himself, to the tune of about to open a store in Worcester, Mass, and pending a licensing review for a site in Boston on Lansdowne Street. So, he figured that out on his own, and I'm lucky to be working with him in the situation. If we're so lucky to be working with you guys in Bolton. Mark Brown cannot be here this evening. He's the third man on the team at this point, and unfortunately he had another event. But I do apologize for that, but I think he might be listening. So anyway, upon doing my research with Erica Uriarty 2 years ago, I was directed in Bolton as to where cannabis interests could and could not be, retail, grow, all flavors thereof. And based on the overlay that your town currently enjoys, there's a very limited number of places that this kind of thing could go if the town is so interested in doing so. 58 Main Street Bolton does meet all those criteria, and it pretty much is the only place in town that this can be pulled off if the town has an interest in trying to see this happen. As you know, it's a well-developed facility. It's been there for a long time. It has a nice setup for a lot of things. Unfortunately, flow is not one of them based on requests.
Nick, I can give you 1 more minute, okay?
Sure. Requests that we're hearing from both the town and the residents of Boltonwood Way. We held an outreach, presented you guys the information in terms of how that turned out. I'd like to think that based on our research to date, we can make adjustments to the biggest conundrum, which has been access off Bolton Woods Way. We did get confirmation that we can widen that access off of 117, so that can be the primary egress and exit to the property. And with that said, we'd like to propose, if we're allowed to proceed, that part of our conditions would be to try to gate the aprons from Bolton Woods, curb cuts from Bolton Woods Way to eliminate any traffic from our potential project going up that way.
Okay.
So that was kind of the biggest outcome of the outreach, other than the fact that people were concerned about where it was located and whether it was necessarily allowed under town zoning. But that's all those findings were presented to you guys in those packets that were distributed.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do. I have a question or two. Nick, I went through the 90 pages of the presentation handout that you provided to us.
Okay.
Stan, you're frozen. I don't know if, can you hear us?
In that the the real focus is for failure, adult use recreational cannabis manufacturer,
Stan,
cannabis
you need
research
to back
laboratories.
up. You need to back up. You froze for like 15, 20 seconds.
Ah, I see my connection is unstable. All right. Anyway, let me know if I freeze again.
Okay.
On page 4 of your presentation, you have 4 phases that you're looking at: a retailer, a manufacturer, a research laboratory, and a tier 4 cultivator. But in the 90 pages that you present, you only really focus in on number 1, which is a retailer. And in the 90 pages, you describe that you and your colleagues are involved in several other dispensaries or planned dispensaries. But one, I see no background in anything related to items 2, 3, and 4 in your proposal that you've done before, nor do I see anything in your 90 pages that covers anything related to items 2, 3, and 4. I mean, you're quite light on what you want the end game to be. It's probably a retailer is the least stressful of the 4, but I see no area where that you're have any experience in being in a manufacturer or a research lab or a cultivator. So maybe you can address that.
Certainly. So most of these developments have a high cost, and given that we're not some large multi-state operator, and also given the fact that the facility's been dormant for about 5 years, there's kind of a duality to the nature of kind of proceeding slowly. For us, we'd like to see that a site could be used initially for the retail sales of cannabis, and the remaining portion of building 1 that's not a dispensary turned into a delivery depot, which would actually service communities outside of Bolton. It just happens to be nicely located on 117, not too far from 495, just down the road from 128. And delivery is going to be a big thing coming up in the cannabis industry. Most of my background is in logistics and delivery, so I can give you a background on that. But in terms of the retail aspects of what's there, given the nature of the building and its fact that it has a big roller door and it attaches to the complex, it lends itself to the development of that kind of facility. And it's also the lightest lift. Once we're in, that's a small non-load bearing modification to a building, and it's operational and generating revenue. And with that said, for every $10,000 a day that store does, it'll make $3.65 million. If the thing's doing between $25,000 and $30,000 a day in revenue, then the town stands to garner probably about $600,000 a year in extra taxes. That's without anything regarding manufacturing, research laboratory, or tier 4 grow. The reason those were all applied for, and the reason why they're kind of being sacked for the primary use, which we want to be this retail store plus delivery depot, is that it is a complicated situation, and there's a lot of factors that are taking place in the state right now that we're monitoring. We don't think rushing into some huge shift in the property's use is a good idea for us or for the neighbors. They've enjoyed that property fallow now for 5 years. So I'd like to think if we're, pardon me, going to proceed with this, we're going to ramp up, we're going to do it properly, and we're going to do it phase by phase, with the first phase being retail and delivery depot. Second, so currently in the marketplace in Massachusetts, there's a lot of grows that have been licensed, and based on the research that my business partner Ross Bradshaw has been doing, he feels that cultivation might be a little saturated for the next few years. And the reason why we're asking for, say, manufacturing to be the second phase is that there might come a time in the not too distant future where there's a flood of cannabis flower on the market, and being a grower isn't the best thing to do. So in that case, we would proceed at that phase to try to do a facility similar to Temescal Wellness, where extractions would be done, distillations, products made, things like that. But that's all based on the predication of what we feel the market's going to become, which is what we feel the case to be. So we're not rushing into this big grow suggestion on that property. We realize it's a, you know, walk, not a run type situation. And if we did have the manufacturing presence as the second phase, it's only an extra $300 for the application and $1,000 a year to hold the research license. The facility already have a significant amount of laboratory space in it at that point, and it seemed socially responsible to perhaps take out that license at the same time as the manufacturing license, so that if a relationship could be made with an institution or a university, then the facility has that licensure already in place.
Okay,
That said,
okay,
fourth phase, if ever, we've applied for tier 4 grow, which is 20 to 30,000 square foot indoor cultivation. And that's based on just the size of the addition on building 2. We would never see any grow needs beyond the inside of that building, that segment of that part of the inside of that building. But we don't even know if that would ever happen. Additionally, we're not sure if we want to grow full plants to maturity, or if we want to make the building more of like a development space where we might just do cloning or things like that, where we're actually not going to be bringing full plants to full maturity and harvest. That may not be our goal in the end of that building, and we're trying to keep
okay.
our options open. So that's
So-
kind of the idea of why it was presented the way it was, in terms of the priority being on retail sales and the delivery depot aspect of the property.
So your focus is 90% on the retail
At this
aspect
stage,
of it.
so at this stage, the reason why I'm asking for everything now is because when we do this, we enter into a 5-year relationship. And if things are going well in the next year or two, and this body feel, and the townspeople feel like the property can handle a little more intensity, there's an opportunity to make a little bit more money with a manufacturing component put in, like your town had almost already approved with Temescal. So we're not talking about that happening today. We're talking about that
Okay.
happening, say, 18, 24, 36 months from now, if ever. And
Okay,
and that's the notion of phasing it, rather than trying to just put all the uses on, but rather than have to come back, because every time an HCA is asked for a function, you have to come back and do the whole process over again.
no, I understand that, but you don't have a plan to be fully integrated. You're going to be primarily retail, and if the opportunity presents itself, you'll expand into those other areas.
Correct, and that's why we're asking.
Okay,
And that's why we're
Okay.
asking for the licensing now, because that way, when
I got it.
when it's
I got it.
prudent to do so, and we make that decision together, then we can proceed into the next phase of whatever this will become.
Okay,
That's why I'm asking for it now, rather than trying to come back to you guys later in terms of this, 2 or 3 years from now.
no, you want a comprehensive permit. I got that.
Okay.
I would like to point out that although the revenue aspect of this facility is very attractive, it's primarily the neighborhood and the quality of life in that area that we're going to be primarily concerned with.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from the board or comments from the board?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
Jonathan?
I have a question. Stan, are you done?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, Nick didn't quite address my question of experience. So that's still an unanswered question, at least.
Well, I could say just real quickly that when we get to that phase, we will certainly seek the best help we can get if we don't have that experience already developed in-house. But
Okay,
as of right now, we're just going to focus on what we know, which is the retail aspects, and trying to get that locked down and have the property in a good place so that it can proceed in the future to other functions if we so all agree.
okay, thank you. Jonathan?
Yeah, so I just had a couple of questions, Mr. Cat. One was how you propose being open 7 days a week. And I just wonder, that's a lot. And I just wonder, like, could you reduce that like to 5 days a week?
I mean, we're here to work with the special permit granting body. the hours that we suggested are the hours that are the limits placed on the project by your own town zoning. So we only asked for what that was or what we agreed to. Most of these places are open 7 days. I've been running a 7-day business for 16 years. So that's another, I guess, experience I have in this aspect of running a business for it's a day-to-day, all the time business, basically, is what this thing becomes once it opens. If you'd like to see more limited hours on it, we can do that. It's just going to lower the accessibility of the facility, and that will be it'll bear the burden and the revenue. But if that's what makes it a more approachable project to the town, then I don't see how talking about modifying the proposed hours isn't an issue. I think it could be whatever we want it to be. The only thing we proposed was what the zoning bylaws say the limits are.
Okay. And then you made a statement about the vehicular connections between the property and Bolton Woods Way. And I just want to clarify, are you saying that you're prepared to eliminate all those entrances and exits, remove the asphalt, plant those areas, and just have entry and exit from Main Street?
Well, so to answer your question, my goal would be to remove as many of those curb cuts as is prudent to do so under the guise of what's happening on the property. I understand that the residents of Bolton Woods Way do not want this development to interfere with their quality of life. With that said, they've enjoyed 4 curb cuts onto that property since their subdivision was created, because the facility at 58 Main Street predates their neighborhood. With that said, we did do research into the wetlands buffer, and based on tags left there by a wetland scientist, we've determined with an engineering company that we can enlarge the 117 access and make it 2-lane. And if that works, then at least in phase 1, as far as the access to the property in general, we could in fact gate all of the accesses from 58 Main Street onto Bolton Woods Way and vice versa. The only one that can't be permanently gated without some form of access is the 4th curb cut, because it's the means by which the fire department can drive around the entire building in case it's on fire. So we would request to limit that one to deliveries and fire, police, EMS access only. But as far as the other 3 curb cuts go, until we find a function for the back building, we could block all that off, and we'd actually provide the tenants of Bolton Woods Way with a more secluded experience than they've had thus far to date. The only reason I'm not suggesting eliminating them all from the get-go is if for some reason the back building does not become a cannabis facility in the end, and this project becomes limited to the front building only, then I'd like to reserve the right to rent that building space to somebody else, maybe not in a cannabis function. And I don't see eliminating all of the curb cuts at this time to be prudent based on that. But with this said, if I could actualize this plan to completion, my goal would be to eliminate and restore the buffer along Bolton Woods Way for curb cuts 1, 2, and 3, and only have that fourth curb cut available for deliveries of size and vehicular access for police, fire, and EMS. So those would be my goals in terms of solving the conundrum of the fact that Bolton Woods Way was built around your industrial zone. I had a lot of people at the outreach meeting who were very concerned about this. It's a small number of people in the town, but it's all the neighbors we have. So I like to make people happy, and I took this to heart. I did some research. I'm sure you wouldn't want to do this, but the other thing that could be done is if you give them back a piece of their road, they could have a road association and actually create a gated neighborhood. And that would actually increase their property values by probably 30%. But that's probably not possible based on the tenets of the 40B agreement you guys made way back when. So I did ask, but I'd like to find every solution to give the people of Bolton Woods Way a long-term protection from that industrial zone. Additionally, we've been in negotiations with the Salzburg family representatives who own the 28 adjacent acres to the 58 Main Street Bolton site. And we're in the process of trying to purchase that piece so that it can be used cooperatively between ourselves, the town, and the residents of Bolton Woods Way in the form of more conservation land to be added between the existing 58 Main Street site and their homes, so that in the future, they will have more protections against what happens in that industrial zone and not less.
Okay.
So I know it wasn't detailed in the work I gave you that's written, but this is part of the conversation that comes about with the HCA and things of charitable and charitable nature and donations and such. So I just wanted to let Don Lowe has been notified of this all the way through, and we're having we actually had one of the gentlemen who represents the Salzburg family come to the outreach meeting, and with that said, I'd like to think that solution would be sufficient to hopefully make the people that live back there a little happier about this
Okay.
going in next door.
All right, Jonathan, Stan, anything else?
Nope.
Moment, no.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
the last comment that Mr. Cat just made, I want to clean that up right now. Mr. Cat threw that idea out of a gated community, et cetera, during a meeting with me. I told him that wasn't doable, wasn't a viable option, so that isn't something that should be discussed.
Sorry, disregard. I apologize. I just
All right,
want
thank
to let everyone know. I've been trying to do everything I can to try to accommodate what can happen there.
All right, we need to let,
if anyone allowed.
okay. Jenny, I assume you have a queue of people who want to make comments?
I'm going to unmute Matt Regan.
Okay, and Jenny, I'll let you select you've got a view of the universe of people watching us, so I'm going to allow you to rely on you to select the order.
Okay, at this time, that's the only hand I see.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
It's Matt, actually. Thanks.
Oh, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, you're all used to hearing from Karen, so I get a chance to speak in front of the Board of Selectmen. So I'm actually speaking for a group of Bolton Woods Way, so we're trying to keep the comments, trying to keep the time together. So I'm sort of representing the thoughts of a group that have been meeting and talking over the proposal here. One thing that I'd like to clear up and make sure that everyone understands is we're not anti-marijuana business. Several members of the Bolton Woods Way community worked with IHP when they were working on their HCA. We got to a place with working with that company and with the town to a place that we felt we actually had something that would work for the community, a manufacturing company coming into a manufacturing facility, 75 employees, 75 cars coming in on a daily basis. The concern that we have right now is with Lovecraft's dispensary first approach. When we had our walkthrough with Mr. Cat, one of the comments we were asking about revenue numbers and a number of, potentially $1 million a month is a potential number of revenue. If you turn that into transactions in Massachusetts, a per transaction number is $44 on average. If you take those two numbers and turn it into trips, you're now talking about 757 cars going in daily. If you look at trip ends, which is how we measure a car has to go to and leave, now we're greater than 1,500. If you look at the Mass DOT survey that was done when we were working with Department of Transportation on the turnover 117, they give us numbers of cars. If I take that number and plug in with that, it's outdated, it's several years old, that's a 7.5% increase in traffic going across a cul-de-sac on 117. We all know what happened with Temescal Wellness over in Hudson. They put in Highland Common, they widened the road there. when the dispensary opened there, they had to cone off one lane of traffic and put a police detail there with one of the highway signs to hold back traffic and redirect people coming through. Bolton 117, we will not have that as an option. We have 2 wide bike lanes that we're trying to maintain, and there's nowhere else for the traffic to go once it's on its way over here. If you look at the survey we did for the master plan, one of the major comments that came back from not just Bolton Woods Way, but from the whole town was the issue of traffic. And traffic has always been a big concern. We are a major east-west corridor for towns going, back and forth, and adding in the equivalent of something that is, the same as, any of the businesses that are on the road that attract a lot of traffic. This is going to be a big issue. We're looking for more of a plan from Lovecraft as far as independent traffic studies. We've talked a little bit about how to eliminate traffic coming onto Bolton Woods Way, which is a real big concern of us. We also have a school bus stop that is outside the parking lot right at the end of Bolton Woods Way. So we'd have to work with the Neshoba School District to figure out how to move a school bus stop that goes there 3 times a day. And the last drop off in the winter and fall months is in the dark when the late bus comes through. So it's not a good place to have extra traffic coming through. And I guess the final bit, just sort of to close this out and keep it as brief as I can, I'm glad the board is asking a lot of the same questions that the residents of Bolton Woods Way have about more concrete examples of a plan and what this is really going to turn into. And we're all very interested in something that would be similar to IHP's plan, where they really spelled out a lot. They came with a big binder of a lot of information about everything. They had answers for everything and a plan for everything. We'd really like to see that. But I'd also like to speak to the Board of Selectmen and say that just because this is the next applicant, we shouldn't treat it as the applicant. I think there are better uses for this when it comes to looking at it from a marijuana manufacturing facility. And similar to the IHP proposal that came through, that was a little bit more palatable than the increased traffic and increased disruption to the rest of the town.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Sorry, I messed up your name.
Yeah, it's all right. We travel as a pair anyways.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Yes, I couldn't find the wave button. My name's Lou Verratti. I actually had a few questions. So one of the big things that the group in Bolton Woods Way had was the value of our homes. So I raised that question, and we really can't seem to get our hands around what is going to happen to the value of our homes. What's going to happen to our water supply, which is very low right now. And also Matt raised the traffic question, but it also raises the safety question, right? So if you have cars cutting back and forth on 117, is that going to be a concern for accidents? People on their bikes, children, children down there, bus stop, so forth. So I would like to request, how do we get our hands around what the value of our houses is going to be after this facility goes in? What is going to happen to our water supply afterwards? What is the environmental impact of these many facilities that are going in? So also, we would also asking about the business plan for the facilities that are going in. We're hoping to get a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year plan of what's going to be going on. We weren't able to get that information as well. So those are the questions that I've raised and some other folks on our street have raised. And we'd really appreciate if the Board of Selectmen could take up those questions and try to get them answered. It'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes, I think you're raising a lot of concerns that are going to be included as part of the host community agreement, or will be considered in the discussions of the host community agreement. Regarding the real estate, we are looking for places that that can tell us what the history is. Unfortunately, even in parts of the country that have had marijuana longer than Massachusetts, there isn't a lot of information available about what's happened to real estate prices near dispensaries, at least so far as we've been able to collect data so far. But we'll continue to be looking into that. As we sit here right now, we do not have a definitive answer one way or the other.
Thank you on that. I mean, I think the overall feeling is that, you know, is this a good fit for Bolton? Is it good for, you know, how we're perceived by other communities, right? So if we put in a huge dispensary, manufacturing marijuana facility, again, we really don't have an issue with marijuana. It's just, you know, a lot of it rolls up into, you know, into, does this make sense for Bolton? Does this make sense for all the people in this town? So we really were hoping that, you know, that would be part of the conversation between the selectmen. Is this a good fit? The last company that was here, that ended up being a really good fit. I mean, we raised a lot of questions to them. They had all the answers. They had all the data. We felt very comfortable with what was going on. There's going to be low traffic. There's just going to be, I don't know, not many trucks going in and out of the facility. It wasn't open 12 hours a day, you know, 9 to 9 at night or whatever the plan is. Again, we weren't able to find out that information. But if we're running 7 days a week with cars going in and out of Bolton Woods Way, that just doesn't seem to fit or make sense for us.
Right. I'd just like to remind you that when we were at this part of the process with IHP, there was the same kind of unease and uncertainty. And the whole point of the process is to get everybody, all of us, educated on all the different aspects of how this is going to handle. And maybe our unease goes away after time, maybe it doesn't. But this is just the first step of, you know, the different groups learning to dance together. So, you know, with IHP, we did end up getting very comfortable near the end. Anything else? No?
This is
Okay.
Dave Brooksbach, and I just wanted to make one quick mention that hasn't quite been brought up yet. I just wanted to remind the board that there is also some conservation land with trail access along Bolton Woods Way. That is something that hasn't been brought up. So it is something that's a public access way for people to access the trail system there. And
Okay.
one other question I did have, and is that I've heard, I believe Mr. Cott had brought up something to the extent of a benefit to the town of about 6% of dispensary revenue sales. I wasn't sure where that was actually coming from. I did a little bit of reading, and I saw some statements to the effect of, at the Cannabis Control Commission, to the effect of the town can, you know, through local taxes, you know, raise about 3% of sales revenue. And in addition to that, 3% of local impact fees. And I'm assuming maybe that's where that 6% is coming from. Maybe I got the 6% figure wrong, but, you know, I'm just kind of doing the math and doing a little bit of reading. When I read about the 3% local impact fees, that's really kind of the costs to the town to allow or maintain such a business. So I don't really see that as 6% of benefit to the town. I could maybe see 3% based on that math, but that's, you know, maybe someone can kind of clarify that to me, but at least I just want to raise that, you know, point that I've kind of been doing a little bit of reading and research on.
Brian, can you help us out on that?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. So with a retail operation, there are two 3% numbers. there's a 3% local sales tax, which Bolton adopted. That's on top of the state sales taxes. So that's what customers pay at the retail level at the register, 3%. Bolton has adopted that, which is the maximum you're allowed to adopt. And so 3% of the retail sales at the counter would come back to the town on a quarterly basis from the state treasurer. The other 3% figure potentially applies to retailers and in any other type of cannabis operation, cultivator, product manufacturer, what have you. And that's the maximum percentage that may be negotiated as the community impact fee. It's negotiated, it's by statute based on the reasonable impacts of the operation on the town. Generally, most host community agreements across the state are at the 3% level, but they're not all there. It depends on the negotiation between the parties and the impacts of the project. So with a retail operation, you are looking at as a host community, up to 6% of the gross sales of the facility being directed to the town. For a non-retail facility, the 6% local sales tax would not apply. So here, since this would be in theory a combined facility, on the retail end of it, there's the potential for up to 6% of the gross sales coming back to the town.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I agree. That's a correct statement. With 3% of that being a liability to the town, but they would get 6% of revenue and 3% of liability.
Right, okay.
Because it's an impact fee. It's not free. There's a cost to the town of 3%.
Yeah, to a certain extent, the town has to justify that in terms of what is the effect of that facility on the town, and is that 3% correct? So yes, it's not free. It's to adapt, to help the town adapt to the presence of that facility.
Right. I'm just trying to make sure that that's understood. It's not the town just gets 6% of free revenue through taxation. There's a cost associated with that.
Right.
The town essentially levies upon the retailer to get back.
Thank you.
That cost and impact.
I'd like to remind everybody to please use the raised hand feature that's part of Zoom if you like to speak.
And Mr. Chairman, could you remind folks to not only identify themselves, but where they live in the town of Bolton?
I will ask everyone to follow Mr. Wysocki's suggestion. Yes, thank you. Is there anybody else in the queue?
Nope, there were 3 hands that were up. They've all been since lowered.
Okay. All right. So no other questions from the board and no other comments from the public at this point.
No, we now have 2 hands. We now have 2 hands.
All right, pick one.
All right. I'm going to let Angela Snyder speak first, and she had her hand up earlier.
I actually was coming on to tell you guys that Pat was raising his physical hand. I didn't know if you guys could see him, but since you gave me a moment, let me just introduce myself. My name is Angela Snyder. I live on Bolton Woods Way. I have 3 young boys. And I do actually have a question. I was going to reserve it for later, but since I'm chatting, I might as well. I was wondering, we've been talking a lot about the impact to our street, to Bolton Woods Way. But it seems like this type of increased traffic would actually affect, much more than just our tiny road here. And I didn't know if at the next phase of operations, or, maybe at I don't know when the special permit takes place or what have you, will we actually get more information about, okay, we've done the numbers again, because when IHP came in, that was a few years ago, and now I would assume that the calculations are different. This is what we can expect for increased volume of traffic. And here's how we as a town plan to address that, whether it's widening the roads, adding lights. I don't know what needs to happen. Obviously, you know, we've all lived here. We know that there's super tiny country roads that people use as cut throughs. I can imagine just off the top of my head, a few that people might use coming off of 495 to get to our road if 117 is backed up. And I'm just curious how the town is going to plan to prepare for that increase in traffic.
Well, that's one of the things the town has to consider when it goes through the community host agreement and the special permitting process. I can't, it's premature for me to sit here now and say, this is the solution.
Okay, yeah, I was just asking if we're going to be presented with that information at some point.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I believe at the very least, we would probably request the applicant to commission a traffic study.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Wysocki. I've already, and the town planner have already informed Mr. Cat that a traffic study will be required.
Okay. One more comment?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
There was Pat, who Angela alluded to, that we can't see his hand up. And then after him, we have one other.
Okay. And that'll be the end of it.
I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry, guys. You'd think I'd know how to use a computer by now. I live on Bolton Woods Way. Thank you very much for having us and doing this tonight.
Can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's Pat. I live on Bolton Woods Way.
How about a last name?
Clark.
Thank you.
Middle name is Nicholas. I'm 35 years old. I lived here 6 years.
Thank you.
Listen, I think with IHP, we at this initial stage, like you were bringing up, like we definitely had concerns, but I think the concerns got a lot. I think we were pretty okay with it once we realized it wasn't retail. I think the big impact, at least I'll speak for myself, is the retail aspect of the business here it's just a weird spot for it. Like there's a whole community of families that live right there, and there's one road in and out. And I don't necessarily have a question other than, like, it was actually Mr. Cat. It was really interesting that you brought up the future is probably delivery, which really makes me interested to know, like, investing all this in retail right now, what does that become in 5 years when all these major dispensaries are delivering? Like, I, for one, if I can get my groceries delivered and it's perfect, I'm going to do that every single time. And you're right. I think that's the direction the world's moving in right now. So I'd be interested to know that, like, 5-year whatever plan of if retail's number one right now, what happens to retail in 5 years and what happens to the storefront, down the street?
Okay, I'm going to ask that question not be answered tonight, but it should be answered as part of all the deliberations that go on in the next couple of weeks and months. Because really we're focused, the host community agreement only extends 5 years. So, what you're asking is a legitimate question. It just takes us way ahead of where we need to focus on the next few weeks and months. All right. There was one more person in the queue.
Yes, Jacob Steinman.
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. So my name's Jacob Steinman. I live at 72 Bolton Woods Way. That puts me at the top of the cul-de-sac. And I really have two concerns that I'd like to bring up. The first is there's been a lot of talk about the traffic impact at the end of the road. But one of the concerns that I have is that where we are at the top of the street right now, we occasionally have people that aren't local to the area. They don't know the neighborhood. They come driving up. Usually they come driving too fast. There are a number of families at the top of the hill with young kids. They know each other. They like to go outside and play together. And and I understand that there's not going to be an answer to this question right now, but one of the things that I'd like you all to consider is that the traffic is not just about the end of the road. It's that our children need to be safe going outside their houses. Right now, they can walk out, they go outside, they play together, and they're usually relatively safe. If there's a retail outlet at the bottom of the road where there's a whole bunch of people who are out of town who don't know where they are, it's very easy for somebody to take a wrong turn. They don't know where they are. They think that the retail's up the road or they have to do something. And the next thing you know, we have a bunch of non-residents speeding through our neighborhood. So I just like you all to consider that. And I would also just like to echo what some of the other residents have said, which is that I'm really concerned about the amorphous and non-responsive nature of this plan. Maybe it's a retail shop, maybe there's some delivery, maybe it's going to be grow. And I understand that this is a very early phase, but I'm really uncomfortable with how little information and how few concrete answers we seem to be able to get about what this is going to look like. And if this is, we're talking about the future of our neighborhood, it would be nice to have some sense of what that future is going to look like.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. You know, Bolton's a residential community, but there are a few pockets like Bolton Woods Way that are true neighborhoods. And I think everyone appreciates how good of a neighborhood that is. I'd also like to go back and to Mr. Clark's comment about I wasn't dismissing the importance of understanding the destiny long-term of that facility, but I don't want to spend too much time discussing the long-term future of that tonight. That was my only reason for not addressing it tonight. All right, back to the board. Any further comments or questions?
Not at this time.
All right, it's my understanding, and I'm asking Don Lowe, Town Administrator, and Brian Falk, Town Council, that it's the appropriate time to consider whether or not to go forward with a host community agreement. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, now is the appropriate time to seek a motion from the board to appoint Attorney Falk and I as your representatives to negotiate a draft community host agreement that would be brought back to the selectmen for review and consideration. It would be the very beginning of the process. It doesn't guarantee that ultimately there will be a community host agreement, and it ensures that there will be good faith negotiations and discussions between the two parties.
Okay. If Jonathan and Stan are okay with that, could we have a motion?
Make a motion that we authorize Town Council and Town Administrator Don Lowe to begin negotiations for a host community agreement with Mr. Cat.
Second.
Lovecraft.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call, Wysocki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr.
All right.
Chairman, if I may, I would just like to add,
Yes.
while the residents of Bolton Woods Way are still on the call, that I know all three selectmen and Attorney Falk and I as well have heard their concerns loud and clear, and I would like to assure everyone that not only have they been heard, but they will be addressed as best we can address them, and their concerns are not taken lightly at all.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank all the participants, Mr. Cat and Brian Falk, for joining us on this conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, moving on. It is time for the Town Administrator Report with Don Lowe.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First on the agenda is an update for the board on the REMAP grant application. And the first thing I should explain is what REMAP stands for. It is the Racial Equity Municipal Action Plan for the town of Bolton. This effort has been led by a subcommittee from the Master Plan Committee. led by Brian Boyle and Bob Romer. Erica Uriarty, our town planner, has been heavily involved. I've been involved. So what I would like to do is just give you the highlights of the grant application, pretty much what we're trying to achieve. So the opening poses the question, how does a small, historically homogeneous community chart a path toward greater racial equity and justice in the 21st century? How does a mostly white town ensure that it is a true home to all residents and visitors? How does a community even talk about equity and justice when all the faces in the room or these days on Zoom are white? These are the questions that Bolton is facing, and given patterns in other areas throughout the state, we suspect we're not alone. Bolton wants to participate in REMAP because we are committed to doing the difficult and sustained work that racial justice entails. We also hope that our experience in the program could serve as a case study for other communities like us, communities who might have thought of themselves as not implicated in the movement for racial justice because everything is fine here. And the project need is stated as, when it comes to racial diversity and equity, Bolton faces several challenges. We need to, one, unearth the historical and structural reasons why we currently lack diversity. Two, build community-wide consensus and commitment around the values of equity and diversity. Three, formulate pragmatic strategies for increasing our diversity. Four, assign responsibility and monitor progress. And five, coordinate items 1 through 4 with the other 2 towns in our regional school district. And the foreseen project deliverables and outcomes are: the most specific deliverable we hope to obtain would be a set of strategies aimed at increasing residential diversity. Logically, it seems like greater diversity would also entail some degree of overall population increase. So we will need assistance in projecting the potential population changes under various scenarios. For example, suppose Bolton wanted to consider a large housing development without precedent in our town. We would likely need assistance projecting the impacts on various town services and on school enrollment. Our school district is also currently exploring whether to build a new high school, so we would want to make sure that our population projections are coordinated with the school districts. And there are many statistics in the application, but I just wanted to share one. In Massachusetts as a whole, the median non-white population in a community is 28.9%. In Bolton, it's 7.8%. So we're trying to make clear what the deliverables are, what we're hoping to attain, and what the goals are here and what the need is here. So I think it's really important grant application, and we should be finding out any day now whether or not we received it.
Very good. Very good. It's very, very timely grant application too.
Oh, yes, it absolutely is. So I thank the Master Plan Steering Committee for leading this. A COVID-19 update. I don't really have anything new to share at a town level. However, I would like just to highlight positive news. It's hard to call it good news while we're in a pandemic, but as a state, our 7-day weighted rolling average for positive testing is holding at 0.8%, which is the lowest number that the state has seen since testing began. So it feels like on a state level, and I think on a town level, we're doing the right things, and I think we're seeing some positive effects from that. Next, I was asked to provide an update on tax collections, which I think was a very timely topic, given that certainly with the economy hurting, and again in the middle of a pandemic, there is a logical concern about how are we doing with our tax collections. So just a couple of data points. I was given a report by Michelle Carlisle, our town collector and assistant treasurer. And so what I would like to tell you is that we took a snapshot in time and did a year-over-year analysis. So at this time last year, the total amount of outstanding anticipated tax revenue was $116,364.53. Currently, our outstanding tax revenue now, oh, I'm sorry, I used the wrong figure. Last year at this time, our outstanding tax revenue to be collected for that period of time was $160,424.91. This year, it is $276,789.44, or a difference of $116,364.53. But put another way, as a percentage of anticipated collections, last year that figure represented 0.03% of collectible taxes. This year it's 0.05% of collectible taxes. So I think we are in a very good place compared to a lot of communities. Yes, we have a little bit more outstanding money. Relatively speaking, not a lot. I mean, it's a big dollar number, but on the scale of things, it's not a huge difference. We do have our ability to collect monies in a pandemic where some communities don't. Also, one interesting data point was approximately 60% of all tax payments are made as part of
Mortgage?
Escrows. I'm sorry. That's what I was trying to think. Mortgage payments are made, 60% of mortgage payments are paid via escrow, and we're collecting that early. So we are positioned quite well. Michelle has done a very good job with collections, and I think we're positioned about as well as the town can be right now, given the state of the economy and the environment as a whole. Finally, for the FY20 and FY21 MassWorks grants updates, for the FY20, as anyone who has traveled 117 knows, the lights have been functioning properly since 8 a.m. last Friday morning. What you will see that confuses some people is if you're in the westbound lane and you want to make a left-hand turn on a Aquatic, you will see at times a yellow flashing arrow. That is now required by Mass law, by Mass DOT statute, I should say. And it's identical to what you would see if you're traveling eastbound and you're approaching the left turn lane at the 495 interchange. The yellow flashing arrow is warning motorists that there's a red coming soon, and that arrow will turn red, which is why it's flashing. But it seems to be doing, the lights seem to be doing what we anticipated and hoped they would do. Seems to be managing the flow of traffic pretty well. I think as a harbinger, I sometimes believe in signs. When I came in Friday morning, it was just after 8 o'clock when the lights were turned on. The first car in the queue on Aquatic to get onto 117 was making a left-hand turn. And before the lights, a left-hand turn was proceed at your own risk, and perhaps you need food in the car because you could be there for a while. And the person made the left-hand turn beautifully. It was so smooth. It was so nice to see that. Saw that Monday morning as well. So it felt really good to be able to see that. I do think the lights are doing what we hoped they would be doing. And as far as the FY21 grant, we did submit our grant application on August 28th. We're hoping to have news on that towards the end of the calendar year. But again, you know, I think we've done very well with the FY20 application, and I think we've got not just a strong application for 21, but I think we've proven that we can successfully manage a grant like this and deliver what we said we would deliver.
Very good.
So,
congratulations.
Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have on any of this.
I have none.
I'm all set.
Thank you, Don.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Next, we're have Kristen Noel, our treasurer and part-time human resources director, to give us an update on activities in Town Hall.
Hey, thanks for having me. So basically, I believe the premise of inviting me to the meeting was just to kind of give you guys an update of maybe an overview of what's been happening over the past year. So I was appointed last August of 2019. So I've been doing this position for about a year. And I believe it is really just to kind of educate what has been going on, what some of my responsibilities have been. If that's not correct, just, let me know. But basically, it's been a very busy year. We have had a number of key positions turnover. We've had some retirements, Linda Day, of course, Cynthia Bradbury in the assessing office. So we have had four major positions turnover this year that we did have to, make sure job descriptions were all updated. We had to post for these positions, interview, and ultimately hire. So that's kept me very busy. One of the other things, one of the key positions or key responsibilities in this position is really benefit administration. And that, of course, we have open enrollment in the month of May, but I am a board member for Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, and that's where that's who works with us to provide our health insurance. So we've had a lot of changes over the past year, which has been nice to see. We've had a high deductible health insurance plan that's been offered to our employees, which is actually a huge cost savings. So it's educating. It's constantly educating our employees to what we're offering. And one of my goals and one of the things I'm most excited about is really to start getting all of this information more readily available to our employees. I'm currently working with Jen Marquis to create more of an intranet for our employees. So even onboarding new employees, all paperwork, all forms, everything that is needed is going to be accessible online. So that's really exciting. That's been a project it's taken a little time, especially with COVID. That's kind of delayed a little, things a little bit, but we're really excited to get that up and running for the employees. And I think it's going to be a great resource for them. One of the most exciting things that we have done in the past year is now that we join Maya for our insurance, they provide us property and casualty insurance. There is a wonderful component to their organization as far as training goes. They offer online as well as in-person training for all different departments, from public safety to DPW to town employees. We have done a town-wide cyber training. And the best thing about all of these trainings is every time we go in, we log into their system and let them know we have completed a training. It actually ends up as a credit at the end of the year to our policy. So for fiscal 2020, with all of the trainings that the department heads have done, as well as the employees, we were able to save about $1,800. So I'm hoping that's one of my goals for next year. That number goes at least doubles. So we're really going to put in really kind of focus in on that. I'd like to do monthly online trainings for the employees, as well as get in-person quarterly. In-person may not happen quite yet. So we'll see when that can happen. And that, I'm not sure if you guys have any specific questions, but in a nutshell, it's been a great transition. It's been busy. I'm actually right now in the middle of a boot camp for new human resource professionals, and I'm learning a tremendous amount. Like the Treasurer Collector Association, there is so much help. There are so many resources out there. So that's been great as well.
That sounds very good.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add, I can't even begin to describe how happy I am with the work that Kristen's done over the past year. I don't think she fully anticipated the different tasks that she would be performing. I don't know that anyone could, but she's done great, and it's obvious that the employees have gotten extremely comfortable with her and bring questions and concerns to her, which is what you want for the employees to be doing with an HR director. And she's she creates a very welcoming environment, and she's really done a fantastic job.
I'll second that. Yeah, Kristen's done a great job.
Thank
Great
you
job.
very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristen.
All right, thank you.
Board of Selectmen business. Are there any public service announcements?
Just keep wearing your masks wherever you go. I think that's probably one of the greatest things that you can possibly do. And for everybody who shops at Market Basket, pay attention to the direction of the aisle that you need to go up and down. You know, everybody thinks it's over, but you know, it's one way. Look down when you get to an aisle. Thank you.
Very good. Next, public comments on the community choice aggregation plan and possible vote to approve the CAA plan. Don, you want to walk us through this?
Yes, thank you. I believe that some, if not all, of the members of the CCA subcommittee are present. But yes, they put out a request for public comment. They received comments. They've been shared with the board. They've been following the prescribed process. They're keeping things right on track. So really what I believe they were looking for tonight was to make sure that the selectmen have received the comments, see if they have any questions on the actual plan, and if they don't have any questions, to vote to approve the CCA plan as presented.
I don't have any questions. Don or Jonathan?
I have
No,
no
I don't.
questions. Nope.
All right, could I have a motion to approve the community choice aggregation plan?
Make a
So
motion that we approve the community choice aggregation plan.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call, Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
This is Lynn. I just wanted to quickly introduce Colonial Power Group. They're here with us tonight. Mark Capadano and Denise Allard, and they've been sitting through this meeting with us. So they're great partners, and I just wanted to introduce you to them.
If they've been willing to sit through this meeting, they are certainly great partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look forward
Welcome
to
to
working with you. Next, establish Board of Selectmen meeting dates through the end of the calendar year. Back in early June, we had set dates through, I think, September or beginning of October, and now we need to set them through the end of the year. I don't know if I have them in front of me.
So we are scheduled through September 24th. Normally, as you know, we have 2 meetings a month, but with a couple of scheduling challenges, Jenny and I are recommending that we have 1 meeting in October on the 15th, and then 2 meetings in November on the 5th and the 19th, and then 1 meeting in December on the 10th, because 2 weeks after the 10th would be the 24th, which is also known as Christmas Eve, and we suspected probably nobody wanted to have a selectmen's meeting on Christmas Eve. So that would take us through the end of the calendar year, if that's acceptable to the board.
Fine with me.
Okay, could I have a motion to accept the dates?
So
Make
move.
a motion to accept the dates for the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Sorry. Roll call, Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
We are at a point of being ready to sign a purchase and sale agreement for the Taggart property. I don't believe there were any open issues. Do either of the selectmen have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a question about, in the letter, I guess it's in the first paragraph, it says, we do not currently anticipate, I guess, renting or giving the property to somebody else. And I'm just wondering about the currently anticipate language. Can you pull that out, Jenny?
Yeah, basically, Jonathan, that's legalese. Not
Okay.
trying to insult Brian since he's still on the call, and he's the one that reviewed the PNS for us. But I mean, that's pretty standard language. I mean, we are saying we have no plans to do so. I'll let Brian speak to that a little further, but really it was just pretty standard language as far as I know.
Well, that letter is actually the next agenda item.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's a fair question.
Yep.
And we can get to that in a moment. But I'm prepared to move ahead with authorizing the town administrator to sign the purchase and sale on behalf of the town.
Me too.
I'm fine with it as well, although it is certainly public knowledge that I was opposed to the purchase of this particular property, but it was the will of the people at the town meeting, all 200 and some odd of them, so I'm fine with it as well.
All right, thank you. Can I have a motion?
Yep, I'll make a motion to authorize the town administrator to sign the purchase and sale agreement for the Taggart property.
Second?
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call, Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Now, my understanding of this letter that we need to review, and I guess I have to be authorized to sign it by the selectmen, is that it's a requirement of the bond council. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That's language that we were asked to use by bond council. I didn't mean to drag Brian into that one.
Okay, so it's not related to the owner of the property asking for some statement of intent.
No, this is a certification for the purposes of the borrowing.
Okay, great. I have no problem.
All right, could I have a motion to?
I know better not to correct bond counsel. They're the ones who are getting you the bonds. What they need, they get.
All right.
I'll make a motion to authorize the certification of intention for the Taggart property acquisition and to be signed by the chairman.
Second.
Sikansky.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call, Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
And I'll have this letter on the counter for your signature over the weekend.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the bills and payroll warrants W21-5 and W21-5A?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call, Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
Can't hear you, Bob. Gotta unmute yourself.
Yeah, I don't know how it got muted. I hadn't touched it. Do we have any minutes that need approving in open session?
Jenny, you're on mute.
It happened to both of us. I think it's time to go home. We have 3 sets of minutes. We have July 9th, August 6th, and August 20th. And I can pull those up on the screen. Let's see, just want to make sure I get the right ones. I'm going to work backwards. These are the August 20th regular session minutes. There were no changes to this set. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Do you want one? You want a separate approval for each one, or can we do them all together?
I would say do them all together. That's fine.
All together.
Okay.
Let me pull up the next set. July 9th. I know there were some changes on one of these sets, although they were not substantive changes.
Okay.
So it must have been the August 6th. Where are they? Sorry, I have to go hunt for them. Can you see my screen right now?
Nope.
No.
We see
Okay,
you.
good. I think I renamed them executive sessions, so I was afraid to open them on the screen. So let me just open these and make sure that they are the right ones. Oh no, these did not have changes.
Well, should we just approve the one that you,
You know, I have them printed out. Let me do it the old-fashioned way. Session. August 6th, there were no changes. Yes, I didn't print them out with Stan's changes. If you give me just one more second, I can get this.
sure.
Okay, there were no changes for 8/20. There were no changes for August 6th. No changes for July 9th. Sorry, I must be remembering the executive session minutes. So there were no changes for any of these minutes.
All right, so I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes for July 9th, August 6th, and August 20th.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Roll call. Wysocki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. The board will now vote to move into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, this being the DPW director, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Do I have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, you
Mr.
should probably
Chairman.
let them know immediately following and read the second one, since we're not going to be coming out of open session.
All right, thank you very
In
much.
between.
We will have a second executive session immediately following the first one. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21A1, to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. We will return to open session solely for the purpose of formal adjournment.
I'll move that motion.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Roll call. Waisaki,
Aye.
Keep,
Aye.
Sikansky.
Aye.